Welcome to Shrinks Who Drink with Amita Ghosh. This monthly podcast dives into special topics in mental health, exploring themes like motivation, anxiety, trauma, and depression. Each episode is designed to engage, inform, and inspire. Join us for candid conversations with expert guests, sharing their lived experiences and professional insights. Your host, Amita Ghosh, is a passionate mental health advocate and professional dedicated to fostering meaningful discussions around mental wellness. With a knack for storytelling and a love for connecting with others, Amita brings warmth, insight, and a touch of humor to every episode. Get ready to explore deep topics, hear unique perspectives, and gain practical advice. Now let's get started.
Welcome to Dr. Sasha Reiisi. He is coming to us from Northern California, and this is Amita Ghosh from Shrinks Who Drink. Now, Shrinks Who Drink chai. All right, so I am so excited to welcome Dr. Reiisi or Dr. Sasha to my show, and Sasha's going to talk to us about trauma and healing and childhood and parenting and all of those things, and I can't wait to hear about it. So I'm going to just introduce you a little bit. Dr. Sasha Reiisi is a licensed psychotherapist, educator, and speaker specializing in early childhood trauma, attachment, and generational healing. He is the founder of Compassionate Minds Therapy, teaches graduate level counseling courses at San Jose State University, and serves on the board of directors for the American Society for Positive Care of Children. That's called American LPCC, a national nonprofit dedicated to breaking cycles of child abuse and neglect. With over a decade of clinical experience in early childhood development, parent-child relational therapy, and trauma-informed care, Dr. Sasha has worked with hundreds of families and individuals to help them break the cycle of disconnection and create a secure, lasting bond. Welcome, Sasha.
Thank you so much for having me, Amita. Wow, that was a beautiful introduction.
Well, tell us about you. Tell us about your journey.
Yes, my gosh, my journey, if I had followed the right path that I wanted to, I would not have ended up here, believe it or not. But I'm a child of immigrants, born and raised here in California, first generation. And much like many therapists, Amita, to be honest, I became a therapist as a result of some of my own childhood trauma. And not to say that anything super bad came out of my childhood, but being the child of immigrants, I grew up seeking perfection, seeking to please my parents and making sure I just don't disappoint them because they were the best things that could ever happen to me. And I truly did love them. And as a result of that, I found this idea of psychology in 8th grade and I stuck with it. I was like, this is what I want to be. I want to study psychology and be a psychologist. And all the adults around me were just like, yeah, let's go. We're so proud of you. You know what you want. And so I went to college, and funny enough, my second year of college, I was lost. I didn't really know who I was. I found myself in the middle of a depression, and I was ready to drop it all and transfer out and change my major completely, Amita, and go into like marketing and advertising because I still loved to be creative. And after a long discussion with my mom, I ultimately stuck it out and went through it. And just eked by. Even in my undergraduate program, I really struggled academically because of my depression. And I was lucky enough that someone did take a chance on me after my undergraduate program to accept me into their graduate school, where I totally found a newfound love for the art of counseling, for therapy in itself. And it completely transformed me into the work that I wanted to do. And I remember leaving graduate school telling myself, I can't wait to work with, adults and teenagers and help them change their behaviors and change the way that they think and heal themselves and find themselves to come out of the rut and become better versions of themselves. And I come out of grad school and there are no jobs, none that are hiring at least.
Right.
And none that I would pay. And I would realize like, oh my gosh, like, what do I do? Where do I go? And it was another family friend that reached out to me and said, hey, Sasha, like, your mom told me that you just graduated with your counseling degree, and I happen to work for this county program that works with the early childhood population. And I'm like,
We
early
will pay
childhood?
you. We will pay you in.
We will pay
Pay
you.
you in pittance, but come work
We will
for us.
pay you a lovely, lovely $52,000 a year to work as a salary to work for the county, and serve early childhood 0 to 5. And I remember sitting there saying, like, how the hell do you do therapy with like 0 to 5-year-old? There is nothing in my education and my training that would have even remotely prepared me for this. But
Right.
I was desperate. I needed a job. I wanted to rack up my hours so I can get my licensure. And so I took it. And Amita, let me tell you, that was, to this day, I think one of the greatest decisions I've ever made
Yeah.
in my
Yeah.
entire life. Uh, it transformed everything for me in terms of understanding trauma, human nature, attachment, human development, parenting, family systems. I saw everything just manifesting so freshly right in front of me with these 2-year-olds, these 3-year-olds, these 4-year-olds who were having these tantrums, who were really struggling to sit in their classrooms and participate, who were struggling with their aggression, who had gone through so much trauma. And it completely reshaped this understanding I had of even what trauma was. I was so blessed to be trained under some of the greatest minds, Bruce Perry, Gabor Mate, Chandra Gosh Ippen, Alicia Lieberman, Dan Siegel. The county sent us to go work with these people and be exposed to these individuals and truly understand everything down to the root. And I'll never forget this one session that I had at Mita where I was working with this 5-year-old girl who had experienced so much trauma, so much trauma. And eventually, she was no longer living with her parents and living with extended caregivers. And I remember that I had offered her a little snack that she could have at the end of the session if she just kind of went along with some of the activities that we had set up.
You bribed her. You bribed her.
I had to bribe her a little bit, and it worked in the moment, and I do things differently now. But she went along with it. She was great. It was a wonderful, beautiful session, and she was so excited for the snack afterwards. And when I brought it out, it was only then that her caregiver realized that the snack had peanuts in it, which she was allergic to.
Yeah.
And she threw the biggest tantrum in the world. Like she was so upset, rightfully so. I don't blame her. I promised her this snack that she could have, and I didn't have something she could engage in. And the tantrum was so big, and she just turned to her caregiver and she turned to me and she's like, "It's all your fault. It's all your fault." And we were like, "Oh, all right." And that same night, this was early in my 20s at the time. I'm going out with some friends, and we're going to this concert, and it's a ticketed concert. And we're standing in line, and we're at the door, and we see this young lady, happens to be probably the same age as us, coming to the front, trying to get in at the security guard. And the security guard is letting her know, like, you don't have a ticket. You have to go buy a ticket and come in. And she's starting to, throw a fit, throw a tantrum, saying, I know so-and-so, you have to let me in, blah, blah, blah. And the security guard was holding her ground, and she just starts stomping her feet and turns to her friend and starts saying, it's all your fault. It's all your fault.
And you're like, whoa.
And while everybody around me is like, oh my gosh, look at that girl. Like, how can she not? I was just having this sudden,
you're like,
revelation.
she is now 5.
I'm like, I just saw this earlier today.
Mm-hmm.
And all these pieces really started to come together for me of understanding the ripple effect that some of these wounds really carry early on in childhood. And I took this approach, I manifested it into something of my own, and I took it into my clinic that I worked after, my county. I took it into my own private practice, and I really started to approach adults, families, couples with this attachment trauma lens that really helped them try to uncover the roots of these wounds that they carry and why they have these wounds and what happened to them. That started to create these core beliefs and these assumptions that now manifest as such psychological distress that they may not truly understand. And so while there's so much of my clients that really benefit from the CBT work, the DBT, which is
Right.
the cognitive
Right.
behavioral therapy, or the dialectical
Right.
behavioral therapy to get them to really focus on their thoughts, we take it so much more deeper where they really begin to heal that little child who had all these emotional needs that may have gone unmet, that
Right.
created this trauma that we, in their body, that is what requires the healing. And so that's where my journey is today. That's the work that I do with
Yeah.
people. And my biggest why is I love to see a world of generations of the next, kin where we are healed, we are healing, and we are
Hmm.
finding balance in the importance of our roles and understanding what trauma is. And so to educate is one of my biggest whys. And so I love coming on these platforms outside of my therapy sessions. I love my teaching so that I can share this knowledge with the world and help them
Hmm.
understand the beauty that lies in attachment.
Right. Right. So, I had just done another podcast with another therapist who is, she doesn't do therapy anymore. She just does
Yeah.
trainings, and she is very much focused on neuroscience of trauma and how
Yes.
to heal it. So, from your perspective, what is the most important way to heal past trauma?
What happens with trauma, Amita, is trauma is so much not the things that are happening to us, right? Much of like the traumatic things that
Hmm.
we consider. But trauma is what's happening in the body. It's the manifestation of what's happening to your nervous system, the
Hmm.
coding that's almost taking place. And what trauma really does is ultimately it disconnects us from our true bodily state. It starts to hardwire us for things that don't necessarily equate to what our gut feeling would want it to be or to where safety would it be. It gets mismatched with attachment, with having to stay attached at the end of the day. And so while many people think that trauma healing is so much more about processing and changing the way that you think about certain things and really getting a hold of your body, it's really about going and reconnecting with the body,
Hmm.
reconnecting with the self,
Yeah.
understanding what is happening in the body and trying to bring yourself back into the present moment. One of my favorite things, and I know maybe a lot of clinicians and psychologists have beaten this like a dead horse, it really is yoga. I think
Hmm.
yoga is one of the most beautiful things for trauma processing and healing because it's one of the very few types of physical activities that truly causes, like, pushes you to slow down and move with your breath.
Hmm.
And this kind of activity allows the brain and the body to slowly begin to reconnect. And
Hmm.
I really encourage anybody who has ever experienced any form of trauma to find some type of bodily movement that works for them.
Hmm.
Dance, yoga, exercise. Horseback riding for some has been really, really popular.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
anything that allows you to dysregulate your body and help yourself reconnect with it becomes one of the greatest foundations for then the work
Hmm.
that you ultimately do, like in the therapy room, which is
Yeah.
doing the inner child work or processing some of the traumatic events through EMDR or even
Hmm.
just basic talk therapy or art therapy. But what's happening in the body is the trauma. And so when you reconnect with the body, that's when you start to address the trauma at its core.
So, in some ways, while you were talking, the thought popped into my brain that on a very, very basic level, we are, trauma is about a threat to our physical being.
Yes.
And so, what you're saying is that when we experience trauma, our mind and our body disconnects because the mind is where we are holding a lot of fears and thoughts and those kind of things.
Yeah.
And if the mind is supposed to protect the body and it doesn't feel like it can, then it's going to
Right.
try to disconnect from that.
There you
and
go.
and these physical kind of form of somatic form of treatment
Yes.
allows us to then start to reconnect with our body and mind, and then learning that those things were in the past, and those things
Yes.
happened somewhere else. It doesn't have to affect me today.
Exactly. And that's why one of the greatest things that I try to educate parents on is what exactly is trauma to a child,
Hmm.
right? We might sometimes think that, oh, well, my child has not gone these traumatic experiences, nothing scary and overwhelming has happened to them. But sometimes when a child is upset and they're crying and their body's dysregulated and their parents just leave them there instead of
Hmm.
bringing them in to comfort and regulate that nervous system, that experience might be so disconnecting for that child. And when the caregiver doesn't come to them in that moment, their body starts to sense, oh, shoot, this feeling is not good. It's too much even for my caregiver. It's even dangerous for my caregiver. And so simple feelings like sadness or even anger can create such this traumatic response in the body that overwhelms the child, the teenager,
Hmm.
the adult, the older adult, as the ripple continues on and on and on.
Hmm.
When we go through those stress responses, Amita, right, we need to fight, we need to flee. And sometimes our brain will freeze
Hmm.
if it feels like it's
Hmm.
got nowhere to go. And we
Hmm.
think about so many of our little children who they can't fight,
Hmm.
they can't flee in moments where they are overwhelmed and triggered, whether it's
Hmm.
because of something happening in their environment or because they can't risk the attachment with their caregiver. And so these things slowly start to manifest as what becomes trauma in the child. And then the assumptions they start to create to keep themselves safe, these become the distresses that come into my office years and years later.
Yeah, yeah. So you've also talked about a little bit about teaching parents how to break the cycle of trauma with children, and how to shape, maybe if they had trauma themselves as parents, when they were children, how to not carry that forward.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about that?
There's one big word, and I will say it 3 times, and that's repair, repair, repair. And the way that these generational cycles are really ruptured and broken at the end is when, even when us as adults, when those ruptures happen, when that generational thing, I sounded just like my dad, or I did that thing, I yelled at my kid, I did that thing I told myself I wouldn't do, is there repair afterwards? And repair often looks like coaching the parents to say, I need to go take a timeout. I
Okay.
lost I lost my balance. Like I was supposed to stay. I teach parents this concept of keeping this balance of being bigger and stronger and kind, like on a scale. And you
Mm-hmm.
have to be the wiser one that allows you to keep the balance. But we're
Mm-hmm.
human. And sometimes certain things trigger us and we lose the balance. We might
Mm-hmm.
get overwhelmed and become really mean,
Mm-hmm.
or we might give in when our child needs us to be grounded and strong and we kind of come off as weak. And it's in these moments that ruptures happen. And so I invite parents to recognize those moments, to pause,
Mm-hmm.
because so much of just generational trauma and actions is unconscious until we pause and really bring awareness into what's happening, what we're doing, and what just happened in that moment. And so I instruct parents to pause, take a time out if you need to.
Mm-hmm.
Don't put your kid on timeout.
Right, right.
Go put yourself on timeout to recollect
So in
yourself.
in the process of teaching parents how to pause, do you ever recommend meditation or mindfulness or
Absolutely.
anything like that?
Absolutely. And this is where a lot of those key exercises and the key exploration with parents come in about what works for you. And how do we continue to give you moments to help you connect? Because
Hmm.
healing is so much more than like, oh, I've done it.
Yeah.
Healing happens in small, little moments throughout every day
Hmm.
that then begin to rewire your nervous system. So we absolutely coach parents and help them find ways that can regulate them, help them find ways, techniques and
Yeah.
interventions that they could utilize so that if they lose the balance, what can they do to find themselves to get back on a balanced level,
Yeah.
to return and engage in repair. And it's essential, crucial that parents know it's always going to be their responsibility to initiate the repair. It should
Hmm.
never be the child's responsibility to say, ugh, things went bad with me and my parent. I guess I have to come and make it okay. We want the parent to be that bigger and stronger, wiser, and kind one to come in and say, hey, what I did was not okay. And I can understand how it made you feel X, Y, and Z.
Hmm.
Come here, if that's okay. Like, let me offer some comfort. Let
Hmm.
me be with you just for a moment again to help
Hmm.
ease your nervous system.
So talking
And
about, sorry, I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
no, and sorry, and once that nervous system feels calm enough,
Yeah.
then we could talk about what happened and maybe what we could do differently next time.
Sure, sure. So my question was, how does our early childhood experience shape our relationship, our parenting styles, or even the way we talk to ourselves as adults?
Oh, how does it not, Amita, right? If people don't realize that our relationship with our caregiver is the first relationship that we ever have. If anything, we could even go deeper and say our relationship with our mother is the first relationship that we have as we're in the womb. Her stress could become our stress. Her anxiety becomes our anxiety. Her uh, regulating habits can become our regulating habits as we're in there. And as we come out into this world, then our relationship with our caregivers or just our single caregiver, it's the first one. It begins to set the foundation for what's okay and not okay. And by 11 months old, Amita, toddlers can start to sense what's going to make my caregiver comfortable and what's going to make them uncomfortable. And that becomes the foundation of their nervous system for how to be in relation, not just with their caregivers, but also with themselves.
Mhm.
So, how does my caregiver talk to me? Those external words become my internal words.
Uh,
What does my caregiver deem as safe? Their anxiety can become my anxiety. How comfortable is my caregiver with setting boundaries with me? And does that equate to how comfortable am I setting my own boundaries with myself, with other people, with food, with uh, drugs for some people who end up dabbling in it, right? How do I set those boundaries? What was the message that was sent to me in this first relationship about what's safe,
mhm.
what's okay, and not okay? And I think about so many children in my own culture who grew up thinking it's not safe to say no to adults. You have to respect your adults. You have to respect your caregivers. And God forbid, if you did anything that was not respectful, sometimes the caregivers would really let you know or they would express their disappointment in you. And we came from a culture where everyone said, we love you all the time. But if they said, I'm disappointed in you, that was almost traumatizing.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, again, it sets this foundation for all the relationships that you have with yourself, with food, with people, and how you navigate it. It sets the blueprint
Hmm.
for how we navigate life down to our most unconscious levels.
Hmm. No, I work a lot with couples, and
Mhm.
one of the things that I always see is that couples who are parents, new parents, will start to have problems because
Uh-huh.
their parenting styles are very different. So what kind of things can you suggest to, new parents that have different parenting styles? And I'm not saying that they are abusive or in any
Yeah.
way, but they're just different.
Yeah, parenting styles can vary so differently. And what I help kind of parents try to understand first and foremost is the root of their parenting styles. How much of their stuff is automatic without them even noticing it? How much of them is their parenting really coming from a place of anxiety or fear or even from a place of hopelessness or their own worthlessness that they really need to heal. And I really tried to, what I tried to do with a lot of these parents is help move away from parenting style and move more towards how do you meet your child's emotional needs here? And how do you take charge in a bigger, stronger, wiser, and kind way? When I try to educate couples and families about these emotional needs that really exist between child and parent, it almost takes the guesswork out of how do I parent my child? Because if I'm suddenly thinking like, okay, I'm someone who uses corporal punishment, well, okay, it worked, it did work, but if I'm looking at it from the lens of my child's emotional needs,
Mm-hmm.
I'm coming off as very mean to my child. That's not okay. I need to shift this behavior because
Mm-hmm.
this is causing more rupture emotionally in my child.
Mm-hmm.
And I have other caregivers who are like, but I want to give my child anything. Like it's hard for me to say no to them. And then they look at that parenting style and they say, see, I'm actually coming off weak to my child. And that's dangerous to them. That's scary for my child. And so that's something that I need to shift as well, because parenting needs to be about the child.
Yeah.
And so many parents, through our own reflective work, start to realize that I'm parenting from here, not for them. And that kind of helps sometimes get them to shift about, okay, can we start to be on board a little bit about what we can do to address this emotional need this way?
I think that's a great point that you made about the emotional need of the child,
Yeah.
because even lenient parenting can be emotionally dangerous for your child because it does not teach them boundaries, does not teach them
Exactly.
limits and things like that. And obviously, I mean, the other extreme is where you're too punitive, and that is very damaging as well.
Yes.
So just looking at it from a standpoint of, is this going to build an emotionally healthy human?
Right.
Is a good lens to have when you're thinking about your parenting style, the parenting habit, parenting,
Yes.
plan, whatever you want to call it. Is that how is this helping the child grow emotionally?
Exactly. And the truth is, Amita, like even so many, being here in the Bay Area with a lot of diverse families coming from diverse backgrounds, we have a lot of families and cultures that are very behavior based
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to change. And that's really what they're focusing on. And it's such a beautiful journey that I love to take these families on, where they get to take a step back and say, the behavior is the language of what they're feeling. And so I always kind of address it in a way of, listen, guys, we can be the over the counter medication. Like when we catch a cold, it's a virus. You can go take all the over the counter medication you want, and that's just going to address the symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
It might deal with your body chills. It might reduce your fever. That nausea might be diminished just a little bit. But your immune system is actually going and fighting the virus. And once that virus is addressed, those symptoms will dissipate naturally on their own. And so I try to instruct and educate families that our children's emotional state, that feeling, that attachment, that's the virus that needs to be explored and addressed. And can we be the immune system instead of trying to get all the over-the-counter medication and try to figure out the behavior? And of course, anytime there's a safety issue involved, of course, we will always address the behavior first.
Yeah.
But for most of these families, like, that's really not the case. The behavioral issues, they're talking back to me. They're not doing their homework.
Yeah.
Their time management is off. And it's like, okay, can we stop to see what's really going on here?
Yeah. So I have another question for you. So what's the connection between anxiety in adulthood and the environment or emotional environment that somebody grew up in. So if you have
Beautiful
a
question.
very, very anxious woman, where does the, breadcrumbs lead back to?
I love that. And anxiety in itself is such a spectrum, Amita. Like you have so many people, for example, who have like the generalized anxiety, who, their body is just such a dysregulated state that they might need medication to be able to soothe it. And there's people who have social anxiety. There are people who have test anxiety. And so it's almost like you could trace it back to where does the body almost feel that it's unsafe?
Mm-hmm.
We think about discomfort as the body's way of saying, I feel unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
And if we even think about what anxiety is, it's the body's way of telling you danger is lurking.
Yeah.
And for so many of us, I have to give a speech. So my body says, danger is lurking. Something bad could really happen. Your body, you don't feel comfortable. You don't feel safe doing this. And so I think about so many individuals who had to go on this, who struggle with general anxiety. And I think about their story of what happened to them. And I think about so many of these kids who often had feelings
Mm-hmm.
that had nowhere to go. And they don't get released. I think about when we go through that stress response, like I talked about, our body has to go through a fight, flight, or sometimes if it gets so disconnected, it freezes.
Mm-hmm.
And you literally think about freezing and how it gets stuck in the body. And I think about so many of these kiddos who have gone through these really difficult experiences in life or have navigated life without anybody really soothing them,
Mm-hmm.
without people offering them comfort in moments where they've been distressed, angry, scared, or just even being. It's not so much that these people had to grow up in like really chaotic environments, but it's when their body felt chaos, what would happen?
Mm-hmm.
And for so many of my clients who have like generalized anxiety, you see that one of the biggest like common elements that they have is, yeah, my family we weren't really like huggy kinds of individuals. And it makes me wonder for that child whose body was just in such a state of distress. Like, oh my gosh, what's going on? I don't know what's happening. I'm so dysregulated. And nobody came to say, it's okay. Breathe with me. Or the child who was upset and throwing the tantrum and the parent said, go to your room, deal with it on your own. And their body is just like, where does it go? It gets stuck.
So
And
let me
these
ask
things
you a
manifest.
tricky question here. I don't
Yeah.
know about your culture, but I grew up in India
Sure.
and hugging was not a thing.
Ah,
So, I mean, you hugged your babies, and then by the time you're like 6, 7 years old, you were not being hugged.
Yeah.
And nobody told their children, I love you, mom, I love you, dad, I love you, son, I love you, daughter.
Yeah.
That never happened. So
Yeah.
I don't know what your, kind of growing up experience was like, but that was certainly mine and
Yeah.
everybody else I knew growing up.
Yeah.
But based on what you're saying, then everybody in India should be walking around being all anxious and stressed out and all that stuff. But that's not the case. So
Not always the case.
right? So what do you think is it that what is it? Just the hugging, or is it something else?
It could be just the hugging. And I think, Amita, like you bring up, it's like you said by 6, 7 is when a lot of that stuff stopped. These bodies are really developing. Those first 3 years are some of the most crucial, right? The first 5 is extremely important. The first 8, I mean, don't get me started, but those first 3 years, and even you think about your culture, how it's such a communicative culture. And I wonder, like, if the Indian culture, similar to the Persian culture, was the child supported, like, in those first years? Did it
Yeah.
have a community of people
Yeah.
caretaking, taking care of it, decreasing the stress for the parents? But what happens afterwards? Funny enough, a lot of the Indian clients that I work with here, they have this performance anxiety that they need to constantly be the best version or else they're going to disappoint or they're not going to be good enough. And they
Yeah.
put this stress on themselves to go to the best schools, the best colleges. And I notice sometimes their families really overwhelm them with activities and after school stuff and academic things and all these things. And I'm asking a family of a sixth grader, why are you putting him in college preparatory classes? And the anxiety, it's like it manifests differently in that case. And so even we think about these kids when they have to suppress their feelings and they can't get it out because that's not okay. We don't do that. Again, those feelings have nowhere to go. And when they continue to just manifest, this is what becomes anxiety. So when my parents, are asking me to perform and do all of these things, my gosh, because that's how I show love. That's how love is now. That's what they expect of me. And I'm about to do something where I could fail. I could not be like, oh my gosh, there's the anxiety. My body is telling me that is the equivalent of death.
Yes.
And so for so many of us, right, there's things that happen in our environment, what happened to us that sent a message to our body that this would be dangerous. To share some of myself, I remember my parents, I remember one time I was getting dressed to go for a family party and I came down and God bless my mom, I love her to death. And she's like, go change, you're going to embarrass me. And, it was one of those things that I remember, like, Sasha became a people pleaser. Like there was a lot of anxiety instilled in my body of what would happen if you disappointed your parents. If your parents got emotionally overwhelmed, Sasha, you didn't feel safe because they would become dysregulated. And they didn't have the capacity to come hold you and say, oh my gosh, right? So you would be left with this stress response. And they wouldn't be released. It wouldn't be there. It would just stick. And so now my body, if it feels like, oh my gosh, I could disappoint someone or I might not look good, it almost has this little, And through my own therapy, it's been a lot of like allowing myself to release, like be that person that came back to that little kid and gave him that hug. To help release the anxiety that should have been released, the stress that should have been released at that time.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So what are you working on right now? Anything that you want to share with my audience that's coming out for you?
Yeah, I'm actually working on a book right now. We're shipping it out to a couple of publishers to kind of see who wants to take a punch at it. But I'm really excited. It's just a huge journey that I've been on for like the last 5 years, where it's taken a lot of my work over the last decade and really has transformed into this beautiful book called The Healing Parent, where it really breaks down everything that, again, you and I have talked about, the roots of the inner child, how the inner child manifests in parenting, how our past manifests in our body, in our psychological issues, and in a huge section talking about how we break these ripples, how we break these generational traumas. And I'm excited that, it's got a lot of really cool personal stories in there from clients with their names changed, obviously. So I'm excited to get that going. And I'm hopeful that when that kind of gets steam, that I'll be more than happy to like share it with you, Amita, and, keep putting the word out there. But outside of that, I'm just doing this for what I love. You guys can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Dr.Sasha Reiisi, where I post all my little tidbits and beautiful carousels. I even got some funny reels going there where
Wonderful.
I got some stuffed animals interviewing some little kids, although I'll put my AI disclaimer on there without a doubt so people don't get thrown off. But I love to kind of just educate people.
Sure.
And so any way that I can continue to get myself out there and you guys can share the world of attachment work and parenting work, and head over to my page and learn more about yourself and learn more about your kids and learn more about breaking cycles so we can really have like a beautiful, beautiful life ahead of us.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on. And
thank you, Amita.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Sasha.
It's been a pleasure having you.
Yes,
here. Thank you.
Of course.